What I want you to see in this video is that if you try to divorce Christian morals from Christ himself, you get to some horrible, horrible places. And I'll show you that exactly by the end of the video. Is it possible to just take the parts of Christianity that you like, the morality, that part of Christianity that you like, that you agree with, and then just separate it from the God stuff, the truth claims, things like the resurrection? Let's talk about it. People in the secular world have long been trying to establish a society that is based off of Christian principles, but making a fatal mistake, which is just the Christian principles that they like and they agree with. They think that they can just take parts of Christianity and say, all right, we'll build the society off of these great parts of Christianity that we love, and then just leave the rest out, leave the God even out of Christianity.
And can the religions figure out how to, I wish I had a better word than modernize, but can the religions bring themselves up to date for a world that their authors didn't know anything about either?
Oh man, that makes me sick to my stomach. It's so frustrating, man. So close, but so far. And here is a debate that happened years back with Matt Dillahunty versus Glen Scrivener, where Glen did a masterful job of demonstrating why you can't do this. So I'm going to play you what Matt Dillahunty has to say about this, why he believes it, a little bit of Glen's response, and then I'll show you where this gets really, really bad.
Take the best ideas wherever you find them and get rid of the rest. And so from, the Bible, I can pull out some really good ideas and I can get rid of its support for slavery or genocide or misogyny or any of those things. I don't have to hang on to the baggage or claim that I'm doing it because there's
in a sense, though,
God.
you're getting rid of everything, including God, obviously, in the process of doing that. And it is your argument, Glenn, that there's a danger in doing that. You can't simply have the ethics without some of the supporting foundations, presumably, that you think are...
Which is Nietzsche's critique as well. Yeah, absolutely. That you get rid of the God of Christianity and you must get rid of the ethics of Christianity as well, because it is founded on the God who took flesh, who became the weak one in order to rise up again and bring us weak ones into his family. And he uniquely gives to the entire human race a dignity, which you can kind of secularize that term and call it the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, but that's basically the Imago Dei. That's basically the image of God from Genesis chapter 1.
So on one hand, you seem to be saying you can't remove God and still maintain these things, and yet you're claiming that secular humanism hasn't done exactly that.
And that's a fair question from Matt Dillahunty. You got guys like me saying you can't do that, and then at the same time you got guys like me saying, but secular humanists have done that. So what's the answer?
Secularism has done exactly that, or hasn't done exactly that?
Has done exactly that. That when I advocate for secular humanist principles, when I do that I'm basically taking the principles that you see in Christianity and just removing God from it. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So clearly you can do that.
You can do that, but on what grounds now is every human being in the image of God, or now in this new updated term, is every human being now included in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights?
This is the central problem here. This is Glen's answer. Now there is no grounding for it, though. Now you're just now it's fully arbitrary. Now we're just at preferences. And you can't go from a preference to a not. And I'll show you the clip where they hash that out, and Matt Dillahunty gets in a corner that he can't get out of later on in this conversation.
This is the thing that I keep running up against is I have yet to find anybody presenting an objection to secular morality that is in any way solved by appealing to a religious one. The big thing that you get to is, well, what's the foundational source and why should I care about it? This is where when Sam writes Moral Landscape and people are like, well, you haven't fully explained well-being. Of course, we haven't. I mean, this is the process where we're continuing to discover things. Well, why should anybody care about well-being is the big question that Sam always gets asked. And that this question also applies to why should anybody care about what a God says? And this is one of the things where whether or not there's a God, I don't necessarily see any evidence when I look at Christianity in particular, at least the way I understood it when I was a Christian, that there's a God who has human interests at heart. It's humans who have human interests at heart. So we care about us. Why do we care about us? We care about us because we're us. Now, when you add in the God of Christianity, you get the notion that no, God's got a plan. You are a part of that plan. And okay, he loves you and he's making a place to either torture you or rescue you too. And he can serve as a foundation that we can point to so that we don't have to point to ourselves. But nowhere in there is there any sort of guarantee that there either is a God or B, that God has the actual best interests of humans at heart. It's just an appeal that God understands these things better than we do. And so when it seems...
It's so funny because he's making a criticism about how these people just believe that there is a God out there who understands things better than we do, us smart people. But at the beginning of his comments, he was just saying they can't even define what well-being is. They can't even lay out to you from a godless perspective what well-being is. Well-being, like one of the most basic things about existing as a human being, is completely unexplained by them. And yet, the idea of someone saying, well, there must be a highest form of intellect that is not human, but the creator of humanity, and we can trust in that highest intellect that gives us the best possible life and definition for how things should be lived, and under Christianity, it gives the best possible lives that you could ever live. Maybe we trust in that. You go, that's ridiculous. Trust us. We don't even know what well-being is.
Seems like God doesn't have the best interests of humans at heart. That's just our failure to understand it, which is really fallacious reasoning.
Except that Christianity is about God the human. I mean, foundationally, Christianity is Christ. It's foundationally God the Son has become God our brother. We've just celebrated Christmas. It's the time at which the Word became flesh, which is just a stunning religious idea that is found nowhere else. Disgusting to my Muslim friends. It's disgusting to the Greco-Roman mind. And yet, the Christian claim uniquely is that God took flesh and even became a single cell in Mary's womb, became the weak and despised thing for the sake of all weak and despised things. And I think from there you get the principle that humanity in and of itself has a dignity because God has so dignified it. Otherwise, it's us elevating humanity to a certain position. Why should we elevate humanity to a certain position? Why should there be such a thing as human exceptionalism?
Why shouldn't there be?
Is that just a power play, right?
I mean, I'm not just asking that to
Yep. Do you have an answer? Like, what do you think about human exceptionalism?
I don't really see any reason why it shouldn't be. Well, of course we're going to be concerned about our own well-being. Mm-hmm. When you talk about, there's
is that moral though, or is that just a power play?
So this is the thing. Talk about what is moral. So quite often they'll say, well, the thing you're describing, that's all well and good, but it's not morality. Fine, then I don't care about morality. You need to tell me what you're going to, because if the only thing you're going to count is morality, is some sort of divine command or a supernatural being that serves as a grounding for whatever you want to do. That's not what I think anybody's ever really cared about for morality. When we talk about morals, we talk about this. We're evaluating the consequences of our actions with respect to some goal, and does it ultimately increase, decrease, or have no effect on our well-being? Which is why I think Sam went with well-being. I didn't used to use that. I used a different language when I did my talk.
But you fundamentally agree with Sam Harris that that's something we can objectively measure through, say, scientific means, as long as we know what benefits, what generally humans want in their lives.
I think you can do objective assessments, objective evaluations with respect to a standard.
As far as you're concerned.
You don't have an objective reason why you care about that standard, just like you don't have an objective reason why you care about a God. If there was a God, he should come along and kind of clarify all this. I would think that would be a duty.
You should tell all the Christians out there in the world, you're sitting across from Glen Scrivener, you should tell him that God has not clarified this. It's so crazy to hear him say, God should come along and clarify this, while there is literally a apologist that is of the Christian religion debating you, explaining and clarifying all the things that God has explained and already clarified. That's literally what's happening right now. But again, there's so much hubris in how they approach these conversations, and it's so demonstrated, the idea that you can't just borrow morality, take it from Christianity, and then make it into your own image or in society's image without major problems as a consequence of this. This last part is a clip that was made by Daily Dose of Wisdom from this conversation. Check out Daily Dose of Wisdom, awesome YouTube channel.
All human beings are worthy of provision and protection. All of them. Right? Would you agree with that? All members of the human family, no matter what their achievements, no matter what their attributes, all members of the human family are worthy of all provision and protection.
So he has to sit and think about that question, but this is the right worldview. The secular humanistic worldview is the right one because he has to sit and think about whether all members of the human family are worth protection.
I have no idea.
No idea. And yet again, we shouldn't trust God. We should trust them. Trust them with the answers. Trust them with figuring out what makes the world great. But he has no idea how to answer that question, what the answer is to that question.
That's a problem.
You say Hitler comes to me and says, you wouldn't believe how much better our society is off now that we're eliminating these people. Then you have to go back and look at it and say, okay, what have you lost? You have to point to something where they're adding value to society.
So they have to achieve, they have to add value. But they don't have value.
Yeah. The fact that we seem to have a desire for meaning, purpose, value, all of those things, he'll use as evidence for the God, because that serves as an explanation for it. I can do that with that exact same example. The reason that Glenn sees God as the justification for that is because he's uncomfortable with the possibility that there isn't an explanation for it, or that this isn't some sort of universal truth. So a preference for, I want there to be intrinsic human dignity, gets you to, hey, if there was a God, there would be human dignity. Because
So he's saying that's how we're approaching the conversation. We want there to be human dignity, therefore we make a justification for human dignity because we just want it to be true. And not like that is a logical thing.
this God is guaranteeing it. And so that same circular preference is there. I'm just eliminating both of them and saying, I'm going to go ahead because I care about human beings and I value human beings because I am one, and say whether there's a God or not, this is what I'm going to go for. And if there's a God that has a better way, they can demonstrate it. Why isn't a Damascus Road experience good enough for everybody?
How do you fault the guy that says, I don't care about demonstrating it? And I'm not going to respect your desire to love humanity, whatever love even means, according to a secular humanist. I'm not. I'm just going to destroy everything and everyone that I can. How do you really rebuke that guy? How do you fix that guy other than just saying, well, your preference versus my preference? How do you really hold that guy's feet to the fire?
So the moral argument for God's existence is not that we need some kind of arbitrary moral figure who has some whims and he will enforce them at the point of hell, and therefore it would be better if we want to live in a moral world to believe in such a God. The moral argument for God's existence is there is an objective realm of moral values, and the explanation for that objective realm of moral values is not going to be a material cause, because morals are not material things, right? Moral values are not reducible to just biological reality, and thank God for that, because biological reality is the survival of the fittest, okay? But moral values are something distinct from biological values, natural values. You cannot get from those natural values to the ethical values. You can't get from an is to an ought, and you sure can't get from
Is to an ought means, by the way, if you're not tracking this, science says this is. Now, how should I live my life? Science can't take you there. What should I do? What must I do? I ought to do this. Science can't take you there. What is, yes. What ought to happen, no. And he's going to say that you can have that.
preferences to an ought. You can't get from a like to an ought.
Of course
If
you can.
there is-
You can always get from preferences to an ought.
No, you can only get from preferences to another preference. It just becomes another preference just backed up with force.
You notice that that pause that Daily Dose of Wisdom points out here. No, you don't go from something is to you must do this. You don't have that jump from a scientific, under like a naturalistic worldview. You have this is, and so therefore this is what I want you to do, but not this is what everyone must do.
Is to a not, but listen to how he defines that bridge being crossed and see if you can recognize the massive problem here in his reasoning.
The problem is, well, all right, we're not going to necessarily. So first of all, I don't think we disagree on the is-ought dilemma. But as soon as you get into preferences, that's the objection. The reason you can't get from an is-ought is that you have to inject a preference. It's injecting the preference that gets you to the ought. I would like to live in a world where this happens, therefore I ought to do that.
No, you ought. What about someone else? You telling the guy next to you?
The objection on the is-ought thing is this thing. If I start with the foundation of I would like to, it's not a problem with what it leads to, but why should I like
with
to?
the power, I suppose, is what I'm getting. Glenn is saying if the person in power, say the Hitler, simply has a very different conception of what the best is for his life compared
Yeah,
to
you say, I want to live a safe life in my neighborhood. What if your neighbor disagrees and he's out to get you and he's going to get you? What do you do there? Again, you can say, I ought to do this, but how do you say he ought to do this from a secular humanist perspective?
your life, then do you have any moral, if you like, force to say you're doing something wrong? Isn't he just going with his preferences as opposed to your preferences?
Yes.
You can see the gears turning here.
You see that? It just can't work. It just can't work, man. I get raked over the coals by people in the comments, and I imagine that I probably will be in this video as well. But in all these, and I'm about to do a video on all the comments that I get, in all these, I don't get someone who can really establish that, who can do anything other than what Matt Dillahunty does here is say, yeah, at the end of the day, it doesn't work. It's just like when Alex O'Connor said, under his emotivist framework, if the majority of the world, if the consensus went back to the triple K guys, that kind of a mindset, and we want to put everyone, we want to make them sit in the back of the bus, we want to put everyone back into slavery, all that stuff, all the minority groups. If that was the majority, the consensus idea of morality in the world, how do you fix that? How do you answer that? Alex O'Connor, and he goes, under emotivism, there really is no answer for that. Under secular humanism, there really is no good answer for that, for saying you can't do that. We will not allow you to do that. Here is why it is right for us to stop you, to literally stop you from doing that to other people. You can't do that. It's going to be your preference versus their preference. Someone's force, someone's tyranny is going to overcome the other person's. Let me know what you think about this, though. Am I wrong about this? I'm very curious to hear what you have to say. God bless you. I love you. Like the video, subscribe to the channel. Consider supporting on Patreon. You'll get the extended version of this video and every other video that I do. Take care. Talk to you soon. Goodbye.